Yeah. I mean, that's life, isn't it? That's... Hello, Pablo. Do you believe in the reality? What? Hey, Saji. Nice to see you. Wait, are you asking me basically, do I believe in an objective reality? Wait, are you trying to propose simulation theory to me or what? Sorry, Saji, can you elaborate a little bit? Can you tell me a bit more, like, what... I mean, is the reality real? Okay, I think I understand what you're asking me, yeah. No, that's a solid question. It's a pretty classic first-year philosophy student question. Basically, the correct answer is this. There is no objective, definitive, empirical way to prove that what you're experiencing through your senses and through your cognition is a real world beyond you. In that sense, the solipsists do have a point. Solipsism is a philosophical is a school of philosophy from back in the old, like, ancient Greek days that basically said that the entire universe, as you experience it, is a product of your own mind. You currently are creating the universe, but unconsciously, subconsciously, therefore you can't affect it. But the idea is that since you can't prove that anything's real except for your own experience of it, therefore it isn't real and it's all in your mind, right? It's the same as, like, the brain in a vat experiment, or basically the Matrix, or simulation theory as the new one comes in. The idea that basically because you can't definitively prove that the world is real, that it might not be. And, like, simulation theories have their own set of really kind of baseless assumptions about, like, technology and blah, 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 their whole deal. However, the problem with any of these theories is that they are ultimately unhelpful. Like let's say, for example, that you accept that the world is not real. Well, then what? You still have to experience it, right? And you still have to play by the rules. Even if you think that they're fake rules of physics or chemistry or whatever, they still apply, and they still apply repeatedly. So, for all intents and purposes, the world might as well be real because it can't not be, and you can't really do anything about it, right? So that's basically why I believe that there is an objective universe outside of myself, while I believe in an objective reality, because to not believe it is to present an unhelpful sort of conversation stopper, you know? It's one of those, like, conclusions that kind of leads nowhere. It doesn't promote curiosity. It doesn't really tell you anything about the world that you didn't already believe, or, you know. So that's why it's kind of an unhelpful belief. It is true that we can't prove it, but that doesn't mean that trying to understand how the universe works is somehow futile as a result of that. I don't believe that for a second. There is you, and there is everything that is not you. The bits that are not you and have permanence outside of you is reality. Well, I have thought... See, the thing is, I don't even believe that much, to be honest with you. If everything that we know about human biology or just animal biology is true, then you... Like, the idea of an individual identity is itself an illusion that your body is creating in the brain to basically make sense, allow your body to make sense of the world, right? It makes sense that, because if you think about it, you're not one thing. You're a collaboration of trillions and trillions of cells working together to make this whole organism function. And they benefit to do so because if they all work together, this whole thing stays alive for a little bit longer, right? And we know this is true because there are ways to disable the cortices in your brain that are responsible for your conscious being. There's a really great book called My Stroke of Genius, I think it's called, if I'm not mistaken. My Stroke of Insight, My Stroke of Insight. Brain Scientist's Personal Journey. Yeah? By Jill Bolt Taylor, PhD. If you want to read about this stuff, I highly recommend it. Basically, yeah, so she's a brain scientist, and this lady talks about how she actually got a stroke in the left side of her brain. What that means is that, what that meant was that during that time, she eventually recovered, of course. What that meant was that the cortices, especially in her prefrontal cortex, that were in charge of her conscious cognition, were temporarily disabled, and all the other stuff, all the subconscious stuff that is in charge of, like, body regulation and other that kind of stuff, was still running. And what she basically described, one of the main things she describes, was a feeling of a loss of a distinction between herself and the world around her. She felt like infinitely connected to the infinity of the universe all at once. So the fact that somebody can feel that way with our brains suggests that there is a part of the brain that is in charge of separating that from the rest of the world, which is is basically an illusion in the sense that like it's a thing that your brain is forcing you to believe in order to make sense of how to take care of your body, right? So for that reason, I feel like consciousness as we have sort of defined it doesn't really exist. It's a combination of experiences and understandings that are imposed upon us, again, so that we don't go insane. True, but even taking the solipsistic path and assuming everything outside of your own consciousness is questionable, then there are still input experiences you can't willfully change. Where that input comes from, be it genuine or fake source, is still reality. I mean that's one way to regard it. But to be fair, though, I have thought that to that anyone can say, well, what if the simulation that's running your reality is just giving you those inputs on its own, right? Like, there's no way you can't prove that you didn't program the reality that you're in now to respond the way that you wanted to make you believe that you're not controlling it or whatever. Like what if you actually like programmed the whole thing and then you jumped into the program but forgot that you did that? Like yeah. At that point you can just make up whatever shit you want. Like a wizard did it. Like yeah, like at that point, you know, it's just pure speculation, right? Yeah. The point is that like since there's no way to step outside of ourselves because ourselves are stuck with the bodies that we are, we just have to kind of assume that things outside of us exist and that they operate reliably, so that we can interact with them. Because otherwise we can't get anything done because nothing's real. Then then what's the point of living, you know? So, yeah. Do you believe in different dimensions, Pavel? Yeah, I mean, I guess. I used to actually subscribe to the infinite. I actually talked about this a couple of times, but basically I used to subscribe to like the infinite universe model, but there are some issues with it, mainly conservation of energy issues and a couple other things as well. For example, I know that I now understand that the universe cannot be infinite in space in our like dimension, as it were, because if that were true, then the light from all the infinite stars every so far away would fill up the entire night sky, and our sky would be bright white. Because if that light has an infinite amount of time to travel an infinite distance from all infinite directions, it would just be swarmed with light 24/7. Since that's not true, there must be either an edge to the space through which light can travel, or there's an infinite amount of matter in the observable universe as we understand it. Either way, it's not infinite. So there might be another me who understands all this shit. There's always another you who understands this shit, Magnus. It's not that tough. You just gotta have a little bit of imagination. I mean, hopefully I'm explaining it in a way that you understand. Let me know if if I need to simplify it. Maybe I can try to break it down a bit more for you. Yeah, damn right at that point. Well, thank you, Seiji. So imagine that this is our observable universe, right? So let's say that like Earth is, I don't know, somewhere over here, you know, or the Milky Way galaxy, I should say, because like one galaxy is, and there's like a bajillion, whatever, million galaxies, whatever, right? So I used to previously think that actually there is no bubble and that there's space beyond all of this as well, that it goes in every direction, right? Like it goes like this. But the problem with that is, imagine if there's actually that's perfect, yeah. Imagine if there's an infinite number of these universes plopped all around, you know? Just like clusters of galaxies and stars all over the place, separated by large amounts of space. The problem is, if there's an infinite number of them, that means that light traveling from these to our universe has an infinite amount of time to get here and fill up our night sky, right? In the same way that our stars in our universe also have a chance, an infinite amount of time, to reach those universes as well, right? Now imagine this is extrapolated ad infinitum in every single direction. So the logical conclusion, therefore, is that our sky should be bright white all the goddamn time. Because for all eternity in the past and for all eternity in the future, there would be an infinite number of stars to send light our way. Yeah, sure, some of it might deteriorate, you know, and kind of get diluted and stuff, but like, in theory, it should be everywhere. Now, we know that that's not true because we're looking up at the sky and clearly it's not completely filled up. So, there must be something that's preventing light from getting past a certain point. So there's two theories that I can think of off the top of my head. And again, I'm not an astrophysicist, so I can't definitively say. So either there is some sort of physical law or parameter that's preventing space from kind of exerting forward, and since Friday NFT that is, and since light has to travel through space, whatever is beyond it is outside of the reach of time, or there is literally nothing beyond this space, in which case our observable universe is all there is as far as we're aware, right? However, I personally find this to be unsatisfactory, because any time that you put history has shown us repeatedly, time and time again throughout human history, that every time we've thought that we've found the edge of the world, we've been proven wrong every single time. People used to think that the continent that they were living on was the only one there was. Then they discovered other continents, and then eventually the circumference of the entire planet. Then people used to think that our planet Earth was all that there was. And then they realized, oh shit, the other planets are also up in space, and they're orbiting our sun. We used to think that our solar system was all that there is. And then we started realizing, oh shit, other stars actually have planets orbiting around them as well. Then we thought that our galaxy was the only one there is. And then people started discovering other galaxies. So every single time we thought that we found the edge, at some point somebody discovered actually there's an edge beyond it, right? This is why I believe that even this observable universe over here isn't what all that there is, you know? It's hard for me to believe that given the historical precedent. We may not have the technology to prove it yet, and maybe not for thousands of years, I don't know. But at some point somebody will figure out why we can't see as much and how we can see more. That's what I'm saying, right? Yeah. So here's my proposed solution to this idea. So obviously we can't have all the universes in the same physical space, but what if instead you could have them superimposed through a different dimensional sphere? So imagine you've got our observable universe right here, right? Now imagine that what we have instead is another copy of that same universe that occupies the exact same space in the 3 dimensions, but is like layered on top like a cake. So imagine you can flatten all of our 3D space into a 2D plane, right? And then you're putting layers of other universes on top of it, like a stack of pancakes, each one of which is its own version of the same 3D space that all of our universes occupy. So presumably that would be like the 4th dimension, which I guess is like either time or whatever, that would be like the new spatial dimension in which they're all stacked in. That way you have an infinite number of these fuckers, and they all occupy the same space, and that's why they're uninteractable. But there's theoretically an infinite number of them, all kind of layered on top of each other. So this would solve both issues. It would solve the issues of infinite, finite matter, but also infinite sort of configurations. And it also kind of solves the issue. You know how like people talk about the whole multiverse shit, where like every time that you make a decision, you create a multiverse, right? Like, because like for every decision you make, there's the universe in which you made the other decision, and so forth and so forth. The problem with this theory is that from a conservation of energy matter, this makes no fucking sense. Because because every second you're making a decision. Like every second that I'm sitting here is a second that I'm not suddenly getting up and leaving, right? Or just ending the stream randomly. It makes no fucking sense to be creating an infinite number of possible universes through every second that I'm breathing. Not to mention, of course, what about all of the inanimate objects that don't get a choice in what they do? Surely there must be some variation there as well. And how does the universe account for that? I think instead, what makes more sense is that concurrently with all the decisions that we're making, there are presumably an infinite number of versions of us that are also making decisions parallel to us that sometimes intersect with our own, right? Does this kind of make sense? So you have other versions of us and other versions of everything else that are also making concurrent decisions, and sometimes they believe their own and sometimes they don't. So the one that we're experiencing is some variation of these. right? Sometimes bleed into this one, sometimes into that one. And again, because we are limited three-dimensional corporeal biological beings, we're only experiencing it all seamlessly in one go, but presumably there might be some sort of chicanery going on. Does that make sense? So that way, so basically the idea is that all of these potential universes are happening simultaneously in the same space. It's just we're only experiencing one at a time because of our limited brain capacity and our, I guess, like our limited corporeal nature. Does that make any kind of sense at all, Magnus? Or are you still lost? I don't know. Let me know. I try my best. This is the best I can do. I call it the quilt, the rope of the universe.
3 days later.
Hey there. So I need to make a small correction. I actually gave it a bit of thought in the preceding couple of days, and I realized that I made a categorical logical error, because the issue is that my proposed model for the universe has the exact same logical problems as literally any of the other ones, essentially. Because you have two paradigms. You have a finite universe and an infinite universe, right? And I was leaning more towards the infinite one because it seemed kind of weird to me that there would be a finite number of things in the universe. So I was kind of appealing from emotion to try to reconcile that in a way that would make sense. And obviously the purely physical space one didn't make sense for the aforementioned reasons that light traveling would flood out the sky. And since that's not happening, that can't be the case. But the thing is, the multiverse also has that problem. Infinity is a very difficult thing for people to grasp. The problem is, if there's an infinite number of universes, that means there's an infinite number of universes in which people have discovered a way to travel between universes, and therefore there must be an infinite number of universes that are incurring into our universe and messing shit up. And since that's not happening, clearly something else must be going on. No matter how you layer it, be it entirely separate bubbles, or if they're layered on top of each other interdependently in some sort of mutual coexistence, it doesn't matter. As long as there's an infinite number of them, everything is happening simultaneously all at once everywhere. It can't not be. That's what infinity means. And since clearly that's not happening, something else must be going on instead. There is some sort of a finite limit to the universe. Or the parameters in which it is finite are thus far unavailable to us. But either way, the important thing is my theory is incorrect. And that's the issue. And the thing is, even if it was limited in the way that I would like to think it is, in that spatially it's the same, but the causality deviations are the things that determine the different kinds of universes, I would still have to explain why that is the case and not anything else. In the same way that I was asking the current universal model, why is the universe limited and why is there nothing beyond, It's the same as asking why is there something instead of nothing, right? Well, we don't know yet. We might never know, actually. So what it basically boils down to, it seems like whichever model of the universe you subscribe to seems to be a matter of personal preference at that point. And I choose to believe in the multiverse simply because I want to imagine other worlds besides my own, and it, I guess, makes it easier for me to believe that they actually do exist somewhere just currently inaccessible to me. But that's an emotional appeal. There's no particular logic behind it. It seemed elegant in the moment, but now that I think about it more, not quite there. So there you have it. These are tough questions. But fundamentally, I do think that the historical record does have some precedent, because it is true that thus far, every time that we thought that we found the edge of the world as we knew it, we have been able to then discover a new paradigm, both in the universal and also the microscopic level, I have no doubt that someday in the future we will discover some sort of particles that are even smaller than the subatomic particles that we now consider to be, at the forefront, at the sort of the base of the universe. There might be something beyond that as well. So I guess it remains to be seen. Yeah. But either way, the big fundamental question will be, why is the universe this way and not others? So for example, if there is no multiverse and we only just have the one universe, why is the universe like this and not like anything else? Perhaps that's a futile question. perhaps that's a pointless question to pursue, because it is this way, right? But I don't think so. Because presumably, if this exists, then presumably it can be created again. And so then you'd have to discover the mechanics of it. I guess one day we'll find out. Or maybe not we, but perhaps some evolved version of us that can perceive more than just the 3 dimensions. Maybe that's what's necessary. Maybe it won't be our descendants, who knows? But either way, tough questions. I still have a lot of things to do. I still subscribe to my model, but again, it's mostly just a emotional preference more so than a logical proof. But hey, let me know what you think in the comments. Ha-ha! Like and subscribe. Anyway.